Can't you just feel that? Open up your eyes because God is everywhere. When I hear that, I want to say, of course, God is everywhere. Because God, principle, is expressing itself as us. And so God is everywhere. And every human being, and every animal, and every plant, everything you meet and touch. And if God is everywhere, love is everywhere. And so that meditation is perfect for sharing my message to you this morning. Last week we unitized the first two Beatitudes, combining their Aramaic original meanings and metaphysics, but also exposing some mistranslations. And we're going to do the same thing this week. We offered an expanded perspective of the first Beatitude that said, "Enriched and empowered are the teachable, and those who are open and receptive to their higher thought." And that's the teaching. But teachings are necessary but not sufficient. Let me show you the difference between a teaching and a practice. Here's the teaching again. Enriched and empowered are the teachable, and those who are open and receptive to higher thought. That's a teaching. Here's the practice. I am enriched and empowered because I am teachable and I am open and receptive to higher thought. That's the practice. Can you feel it? And that's the difference in having a true spiritual practice and embracing your spiritual growth. Teachings won't get us there. They're a first step. They're 90%. They're 10% of a 100% journey, and the 90% is the practice itself to use those teachings. And that's why the Fillmores were so adamant 125 years ago. They were known for saying many times that it is their job as founders or co-founders of a movement to stretch people's thinking. And of course, they were stretching people's thinking of the old-time religion. Wanted to get people out of that box. But in many ways, we're still there. And as Cher and I have stretched the Beatitudes outside the old proverbial box, that's what we want very much to do. Because we feel an obligation, a responsibility, a privilege as your ministers to stretch your thinking. The second Beatitude, as we said last week, enriched, favored, empowered are those who yearn for a closer relationship with their divine nature, for they are guaranteed unlimited opportunities for soul growth. That's what the second Beatitude was last week. And that's the teaching. This week we're going to take a meta look at the next two Beatitudes. Are you ready to once again move into deep water? Okay, let's go. The third Beatitude has been totally confused with a Home Depot doormat. When you hear it, you'll know what I mean. And the fourth has become more of a religious platitude than a spiritual attitude. So let's clean them both up. The third Beatitude, as it is generally written, says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." Very familiar. We've all grown up on it. As it is normally understood, meek implies resignation, submissiveness, self-abasement even. It suggests a willingness to be seen and not heard, to mindlessly submit to authority, to be predictably cooperative, silent, and compliant. This control-oriented beatitude promises the meek that they will be taken care of by their antonyms. You know, people who are the opposite of meek. Antonyms. People who are headstrong, power-hungry, intractable, cantankerous, and just plain ornery. I'm a fair student of history, and I keep pretty much up with current events, and I can tell you that meek, submissive people, no matter how nice they are, seem to be more followers than leaders. They don't run for president. They aren't usually world leaders or CEOs of mega corporations. They don't coach sports teams. They aren't top-selling salespeople either. It's just not their nature. So what is this beatitude really saying to us? The first clue comes from Yeshua, the man called Jesus himself. He was an adept who revolutionized the world 2,000 years ago. The Beatitudes come from a spiritual leader who blasted the religious authorities of his day, who was outspoken, who reinterpreted Jewish law, who became one with his Christ nature, and told us that we could all do the same. Clearly, that doesn't sound like a man who encouraged us to be submissive, compliant, and seen and not heard. That wasn't his nature. And he's suggesting that that's not our nature either. So as you might have guessed, the word meek is an intentional mistranslation. It is a categorical, manipulative statement. Did I say categorical, manipulative statement? Well, it is. The more accurate translation of the Aramaic word praeses, P-R-A-E-I-S, has an undeniable, incontrovertible, unarguable connotation of non-resistance or unrestrained receptivity or broad-mindedness. A little bit different from our interpretation of meek, would you say? And earth, as it is used in this beatitude, means our waking consciousness. So inherent to earth has nothing to do with world conquest and the wars and self-interest and blame that go along with that. Not what it's talking about. So we believe this beatitude says, enriched and enlivened are those who are broad-minded, who are non-resistant in their receptivity to their innate divinity. For they shall cultivate a consciousness grounded in truth principles. Enriched and enlivened are those who are broad-minded, who are unrestrained in their receptivity to their innate divinity, for they shall cultivate a consciousness grounded in truth principles. That resonates with us. Hope that resonates with you. Now, when you want to control people, you want meek people, compliant people, submissive people. When you want people to be set free, you encourage them to be broad-minded and unrestrained in their receptivity to their greatness. That's the difference in the old beatitude and in the interpreted beatitude. The fourth beatitude, as is generally written, says, blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Now the key to understanding this beatitude is a correct interpretation of the word righteousness. Knowing that what we know about the nature and character of Jesus, the religious revolutionary, the man who became one with his Christ nature, we do not believe he would have endorsed denominational biases or dogmas or advocated people walking around with pious grins on their faces, which is what he was used to 2,000 years ago. Righteousness, metaphysically interpreted, means right thinking. Thinking grounded in truth principles. It implies keeping our thoughts at a spiritual octave. So we believe the fourth beatitude says this: enlightened are those who are well-grounded or have grounded their thinking in truth principles, for they will actualize their Christ potential. Enlightened are those who ground their thinking in truth principles, for they will actualize their Christ potential. Now these two unitized interpretations are the ones that resonate the most with Cher and I. And there's something we want to say about our metaphysical interpretations. They are aggressive, as those of you who know. They are simply, though, an interpretation and not the definitive interpretation of Scripture. They are simply Cher and Billy's versions based on our own growth and understanding and metaphysical knowledge. As we grow, we gain new insights, and our interpretations will change too. 100 years from now, an hour from now, a week from now, our interpretations will change because we will have grown, as you will have grown. You know, there are over 200 to 300 interpretations, standard translations of the Bible. And you probably got your favorite version. Well, wouldn't it be nice one day if we had 200 or 300 metaphysical interpretations? Yeah. Of the Bible? Wouldn't that be cool? Your interpretations. That would be wonderful. Just so you know, too, our metaphysical interpretations are well researched and well thought out. They are not just fig Newtons of Cher and my imagination. You put some thought behind them. We take our interpretations seriously because we take your spiritual growth seriously. Charles and Myrtle Fillmore used to change the words in written material to reflect the theology that they called unity theology. Myrtle, by the way, those of you who know Myrtle, was a poet. Well, Myrtle was also famous for changing the lyrics of songs so that the songs would be more appropriate to unity teachings. She upset a lot of people. You can find her lyrical changes, by the way, to songs like Rock of Ages, referenced in James Dillard Freeman's The Story of Unity, page 174 and 175. So you don't have to take my word for it. Any licensed unity teacher who's come along in unity already knows this. I see Shirley shaking her head. It's important. We believe that you wouldn't want us to water down our metaphysical teachings. If we did, it wouldn't be metaphysics, it would be metaphysical. And Cher and I don't do metaphysical, I can assure you. We also take the practical application of metaphysical teachings seriously. Cher's up next, and she's going to do just that.
So, you have a whole new look at Beatitudes 3 and 4. And remember, you're going to get at the end of this whole series, you'll get a little brochure that has all the Beatitudes interpreted that you can keep. So that you'll be getting that at the end. You have to hold out and wait. But Beatitudes 3 and 4 we love because they have a lot of spiritual meat and potatoes in terms of our practical application. So I'm going to dive in and just get started. Because the first one, Beatitude number 3, talks about non-resistance. And this one, I don't know about you, but this one hits home for me because it's so easy to resist anything that challenges our beliefs and practices. Anybody else with me? Yes. You know, we get in a comfort zone and it feels right. And somebody comes along and challenges it. It's very easy to get resistant and to start arguing against it. But instead of getting defensive against it, this Beatitude tells us we want to be non-resistant. We want to be open to our divinity. We want to be open to these new ideas so that we can be enriched. And there's one other time we get resistant. See if anybody else, this is me, I don't know, but it might be you too. I find myself getting resistant to using these truth principles when I most need to use them. You know, it's easy to do all this stuff when everything's going great. But when we're running into that rough patch, or things are going bad, or we're frustrated, or we're feeling like, oh, I can't stand this anymore, we have lack, or we're having a problem with people, I don't want to use these affirmations, they sound stupid. Or I don't have time to meditate right now. I got too much to do. And so we resist the very thing that we know will help us. So this Beatitude reminds us, be non-resistant. Your practical application this week for this is to give up the fight. We're going to demonstrate how to give up the fight. I'd like everybody to put your hands in a prayer position. We are not going to beseech. We are not going to beg. Okay? We're going to demonstrate something. Right now, I would like everybody to focus on your right hand and push your right hand. Okay, now tell me what pretty much is happening with your left hand. Okay, for most people, your left hand immediately, without even thinking, pushes back. And when your left hand pushes back, what does your right hand do? Pushes harder. And before you know it, you're just in this place where if you really get into this, your hands will start shaking and you're not going anywhere. Ever have this happen in life? Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, here you are doing just great, and along comes a problem or a situation or just stuff, and it pushes against you. And you want to fight it. And before you know it, it's harder, and it just reaches a place where you just can't move at all. So shake out your hands because I want to demonstrate what can really happen here. Again, prayer position. Gently and easily now, so you don't hurt the person next to you. All right? Gently. Just push with your right hand without resisting with your left. And what's happening? Movement. Isn't that awesome? It almost feels like this is weird. I'm not used to this. It's too easy. It doesn't have to be hard. And this beatitude reminds us it doesn't have to be difficult. Here's a little secret. Everybody ready? Take a breath. This is important. When it feels like a struggle, that's a signal to step back. When it feels like a struggle, that's a signal to step back. At that moment, you need to make the time to go to headquarters, to go into this place of silence. I don't care if it's only 10 minutes. You don't have to commit a huge time's better. But 10 minutes, just step back and go in. Go within. Connect to that place that is the portal to your oneness, where all the answers, all the resources reside. Right here. You will be enriched. I am enriched. I am enlivened when I am non-resistant. That's Beatitude 3. Now we come to Beatitude 4. This is a great one because it says to be grounded in right thinking. Now let's consider that for just a minute. How many of you have heard the phrase, actions speak louder than words? Right? We all know that's true. But there's something even more important. Thoughts precede actions. Thoughts precede actions. Even if you don't always believe this, you might think, I did that without thinking. Science has proven we have that nanosecond that we can make a decision. We get to make a choice. We don't all take advantage of it, as was illustrated by the Daily Word. Sometimes we make poor choices. But we have that moment. They have a name for it, which is really weird, and Bill knows the name for it. Bear-shift potential. He's the science one. But it's proven we can do it. So we have that moment to think before we speak. Our thoughts create our choices, and our choices create our actions. So the key here is, what am I thinking? Are you aware of what you're thinking? And so this week we want you to really begin to make a conscious effort to know what's going on up here in your mind. Because you are director of your show. And sometimes we leave it to improv. Anybody do that? What's going on up here? It's just improvisation, and anybody gets to speak up there. You know, you're the director. You get to control it. So we have a technique this week that ties in with that. If you love movies like we do, you know how movies are made. It's very different from Broadway, where you just have to go with the flow because it's live. In movies, they get to keep doing it until they get it the way the director wants. And they have this great little thing called the clapboard. So we're going to imagine a spiritual clapboard. Because in the movies, they get everybody ready, and the director says, take one, action. And they go off and running. And somebody messes up. No worries. Cut. Take two, action. And they just keep doing it until they get it right. So I want you to imagine that in your mind you have this wonderful spiritual clapboard. And every time you are aware of those errant thoughts, those negative thinking, that stuff that's that improv that's just speaking, you know, that self-talk that's not so good, or anything that's making you worry, as soon as you're aware of it, hear it. Take two. And I get to decide what I'm going to say. So this week, spiritual clapboard is your second wonderful technique. And again, there is a little handout you can pick up on your way out that will remind you of these two techniques. Now, as Bill and I were talking about this, we both said, you know what everybody's going to say. They're all going to be sitting there saying, yeah, this sounds great. But Bill and Cher, you guys just do not understand what I'm going through. You do not comprehend what's going on in my life right now. And you know what? You're right. We don't. But we do know that everybody has situations they're dealing with. And we want to leave you with the knowledge that no matter what is going on around you in the world of appearance, within you is that place of peace. And when you have your thoughts grounded in principle, that peace is there. So we want to leave you with a quick story to just kind of nail that home. The story is told about a man who wanted to find a painting that would actually illustrate peace, so that whenever he looked at it, he would feel peace. He couldn't find one, so he decided to run a contest, and he invited people to submit their paintings. So far and wide, all these beautiful paintings came in, gorgeous scenery everywhere, and the pre-judges narrowed it down to 2 pictures. Well, everybody came to observe, and they came and looked at all the paintings that weren't selected, and they're thinking, these were beautiful. What on earth could these 2 look like? So the first painting was unveiled, and it was this perfect picture of tranquility. Beautiful lake, looked like the glass mirror, and the reflection of the sky and the clouds and the trees were perfect. And there were sheep in the distance grazing in the field. I mean, it was the most beautiful picture of peace you could imagine. And everybody's just, oh, this has got to be the winner. And then the second picture was unveiled. And you could hear everybody, what? They thought it was a mistake. Because in this picture, it was dark colors, grays. There was a tumultuous waterfall that was just crashing down over rocks. And there were trees just struggling to get through those rocks. And there were storm clouds in the sky, and you could almost hear the thunder and see the lightning that was about to erupt. You could imagine, you could almost feel the spray of the rain and the waterfall. It was just chaos. And this one tree just stretched out, and it was just touching the waterfall, and the water was crashing over it, and everybody's thinking, how could this be peace? And then you could hear people one by one. Oh, I get it. Because all of a sudden they all noticed in the hollow of that tree, a little bird had built a nest. And that bird was just sitting there with her eyes closed and her wings just spread over her eggs. She was content. She was peaceful. She was totally oblivious to all of the tumultuous chaos around her. That was the picture that won. And that's the picture we want to leave with you in your heart, is that place. No matter what tumultuous chaos is going on around you, no matter what the world of appearance throws at you, when we ground our thinking in truth, we are at peace. So this week, know that you are blessed, you are enriched, you are enlivened, because you are non-resistant, open to what comes. You're feeling. You allow yourself to open to the feeling of acceptance. And then your thinking is right because it's grounded in truth. And you know that all is well because you're walking the spiritual path